Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm back with another video. I just came back from Russia. I was there for about a month, and had a chance to talk with a bunch of people and exchange a lot of views on all kinds of subjects. One of the things that I've pointed out is that I practice my basic training in life has been as a Buddhist meditation practitioner. I practiced as a monk for several years, and I'm an advocate of sitting meditation. Several people have expressed interest in this, and what I'd like to do in this video is to just record for the sound quality, because some Russian people do better listening to English rather than reading it. So I'm going to be reading an article that I wrote about 10 years ago, and also I will at the end I will make a few comments on what I wrote then. So here goes. It's called "Why Sit." Very simple. Why sit? Um, what is this thing about sitting meditation? Sometimes I wonder what it is that makes me sit and practice, and after all, why lots of people throughout history have done so. Most people, especially Westerners, think that meditation is something weird or even dangerous. Years ago, I was visiting a community not too far from my university. There was a time of burgeoning spirituality in 1970. And I was talking with one of the members of this community, and when I told him I was interested in meditation, he replied that meditation is a sin. So when has breathing while being aware of one's own breathing been a bad thing? Another time, years ago, I went on a business trip to Birmingham, Alabama for a business workshop. My host, in the midst of some cordial banter, asked, "So what did you do before you were in the insurance business?" After I left the monastery, I got into my head that I needed to understand the financial system, which the more I learned about it, the more shocked I got, but that's another issue. So he said, "What did you do before you were in the insurance business?" I said, "I was a Buddhist monk." A big curtain of ice crashed down between the two of us, and his face became cold and hard. "That's different," he shot back. Sheesh. Worldwide growing interest in meditation practice. Well, nowadays there is growing interest in meditation practice, but in Asia, that is Eastern Asia, I find that people are far more open to the subject even if they don't do it. Seems like people, at least in Thailand and China, where I've spent most of my time the last few years, often consider it to be fairly normal and commendable. So the question is, what is it about meditation that is so special while not being special at all? I did a web search and found pictures of various famous sages. And below you'll see pictures I have in this blog post, different pictures of some of these sages. So there's a picture of Shakyamuni Buddha, the sage of the Shakya clan, who reportedly lived about 2,500 years ago and is considered the founder of Buddhism. And there's a picture of him sitting under the Bodhi tree, that is the tree where he attained enlightenment. And in fact, I visited India and went to the temple, with the place where the Buddha was practicing, and actually did sit under the grandchild of the original Bodhi tree. So the Bodhi tree was where the Buddha attained enlightenment. He was meditating under the tree. And years later, the tree, someone cut a branch from the tree and sent it to another country. I think it was Sri Lanka. And it grew into a big tree. And the original Bodhi tree died, burned down. I don't remember exactly what happened to it, but it burned down or went away. And the son of the Bodhi tree grew up to be quite a large tree. And then somebody got the idea of cutting a branch off from that tree and replanting it in the Mahabodhi temple in India. And by the time I got there, it had grown to be quite a large tree. I mean, we're talking 2,500 years. So, if this tree is a mere youngster, 300 years old or whatever it is, it's going to be a large tree. Anyway, so Shakyamuni Buddha was sitting under the Bodhi tree. The next picture I have is of Xuanhua, the famous disciple of Chan Master Xu Yun. And Xuanhua established a strong Buddhist center in California called the City of 10,000 Buddhas in Mendocino County, Northern California, as well as other centers. And there's a picture of him sitting in the lotus position. I visited that place. It's a pretty interesting place. very dedicated practitioners there. And the next picture I have is of Lahiri Mahasaya, the famous sage discussed in Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi. So before I started practicing Zen formally, I read this book called The Autobiography of a Yogi, and they talk about meditation. So whether you're a Buddhist or a Hindu practitioner, many people do practice meditation, and as I'll mention as I go further along in this article, that people of different faiths practice meditation. So the next picture is from the Brooklyn Museum showing a man meditating in a garden setting. I think this picture is either Persian or Indian, I'm not sure, but you can take a look at it below and you can see what you think. And then there's a picture of the great sage Lao Tzu, who lived in China and was roughly contemporary with Gautama, the Indian who became known as the Buddha. He was also contemporary with Confucius, and apparently Confucius knew Lao Tzu and regarded him very highly. As an aside, the word Buddha was the name that the Buddha, when people asked him who he was, he answered Buddha, which means literally awake. So Lao Tzu was the main founder of Taoism, and Tao is the Chinese word for the way, things just as they are. Next we have, there's another picture of Taoist meditation, and this is called Gathering the Light as the method used. You can take a look below and you'll see these pictures in the post. And the next picture I have is named Mahavira, and he was a contemporary of the Buddha. It would be hard for the average person to tell the difference between this picture and one of the Buddha. They both advocated sitting cross-legged, and both are often depicted with hands in their lap, seated on a lotus seat with a halo on their head. Mahavira was the founder of the Jain religion, which is still practiced in India. And some of their concepts are rather similar to Buddhism, specifically the doctrine of karma, or cause and effect. Below this picture of Mahavira is the picture of Bodhidharma, the legendary Indian monk who brought Chan, or Zen as it's called in Japanese, to China. He is said to have sat meditating facing a wall in a cave for 9 years. And Lao Tzu, who wrote the classic Tao Te Ching, the most popular book on Taoism, is shown in another picture. It's obviously a classic Chinese rendition from the style. And there's another picture of Taoist meditation, as I mentioned, called Gathering the Light. So moving on here, there are some people sitting, meditating, enjoying their meditation together. And this is some people meditating in Madison Square Park. I'll just mention that some of the people that I've talked with, very new people practicing meditation, say that it's quite difficult to do that. And so I've pointed out that it can be difficult to meditate, but it's good to sit with other people because, let's say, I have a small group that I practice. I teach meditation intermittently, and I'm not claiming to be some enlightened sage, but I like meditating, and I found it's helped me. And people here in Chiang Mai are interested in that, and I've talked with people in China. They're interested in meditating as well, or learning how to do it. There's not a lot of instruction going on, from what I can tell, in Russia, so I'm thinking going back there and helping people learn how to do it. But in any case, the question I ask is, what do all these spiritual practitioners have in common? Whether they're Taoists or Confucian, even Confucian they practice, and the Hindus, and as I'll mention a little bit earlier, or farther on, even people who are Islam practice meditation. So years ago, while I lived at the San Francisco Zen Center's Green Gulch Farm, I spent time with a Yurok Indian medicine man, Harry Roberts, who was actually half Irish and half Indian, but he had trained with his uncle, the tribe's medicine man. The Yurok Indians were a tribe in Northern California. I believe they're extinct now. Maybe there are some people left, but they were pretty much wiped out by the enlightened Europeans who think that causing genocide all over the world is somehow an enlightened thing to do. Anyway, he told me that one of the practices that he did was to go to an isolated forest or mountain place, draw a 3-foot circle, and sit there for 3 days with no or almost no moving, no eating, of course, also. And so this would be called a vision quest. One time when I was sitting waiting for an airplane in the Singapore airport, I asked if there was a meditation room. In Bangkok and Chiang Mai, Thailand, there is a room for Buddhists and a room for Muslims. In Singapore, there was a prayer room that is presumably non-denominational, but probably almost anybody using it is Muslim. It's my guess. There's also a meditation room for the use of anyone. I went inside and there was just a few small mats and one chair. I arranged the mat so I could do zazen, seated Zen meditation. It was there for a few minutes when 2 people entered. One sat cross-legged and one sat in a chair. Because of the hat one wore, I knew they were Muslim. I could hear them talking, probably Malay. One said one sound that seemed to be Buddha. It's just my guess. That they were talking about that Westerner sitting by the rear wall of the room and guessing I was Buddhist. Interestingly, I visited a bead shop in Singapore, and the owner sold various kinds of beads, such as necklaces. He sold Buddhist malas, or mala is I think it's an Indian word for a rosary. What Catholics you see have rosary beads, Buddhists also do. And so there I was, and he sold Buddhist malas, and when I saw some odd to me looking malas, he told me they were Muslim beads. They have 99 beads, and Muslims chant the names of God. Buddhists use ones with 108 beads, and each bead is a reminder of a certain principle of Buddhism. And of course, Catholics also use rosary beads. Well, it is not necessarily the same thing as sitting, but they are used to help control the ongoing out-of-control thought process, which 99% of us call thinking. One time I found myself through an internet chat situation with someone with an Arabic-sounding name. He was fretting about the world, which I can certainly relate to, so I suggested that he go into a quiet room, sit down, and start to breathe. Breathe in, ah, and breathe out, la, ah, la, ah, la. He was flabbergasted. How did you know I already do that? You must be Muslim. No, I replied. This is normal. Sit down, breathe in, breathe out. This is the way human beings calm the mind. No, you must be Muslim. You should read the Quran. I thanked him for his suggestion. The forest monks in Thailand breathe in Bud and breathe out To. Bu, To, Bu, To. Same thing. There are all kinds of methods one can use in the process of meditation, but common to many is the simple act of sitting. But why sitting? Seems to be the natural way for us to just calm and settle down. But in addition, when we sit in a symmetrical way, such as cross-legged or in a chair with feet planted on the ground, our body finds alignment and balance. Once the body is aligned and in a state of balance and in harmony with gravity, our whole being settles down in a natural and harmonious way. We don't have to do anything, which is exactly the point. We human beings are always doing or thinking we have to do something, eat, sleep, walk, talk, but these are more complicated and require more than just the act of focusing or just observing. So we create more and more stuff from our actions. It really does get tiresome, finally. There's nothing to do and nothing to fix. Everything is just as it is. Once we are willing to just sit, just standing, just walking, and so on become natural, our life becomes seemingly effortless without struggle. Learning to sit is the first step. Lying down is okay too, but it seems harder to keep the mind from wandering. Likewise with walking or standing. All of these are good and useful, especially if done observantly. Once we reach a point of observing and focusing, then our actions start to change in subtle ways that are apparently more harmonious. Human beings share some basic hardwired values like not harming, killing, stealing, lying, etc. Of course, those unwholesome activities can be very profitable, which is why lots of people do them. But in the end, settling down, seeing things as they are, life becomes somehow easier. So sit, be aware. Wordless teaching. Just do what you see. Usually, when we enter a Buddhist temple or meditation hall, there is a statue or an image of Shakyamuni Buddha, or another of his famous disciples or enlightening beings. People objectify these images and we bow to them. Some people dismiss this as idol worship. How can bowing or offering incense of flowers to a block of wood or stone be useful? It's a good question. However, when I see such a statue, I ask, what is this about? Is the block of wood saying, give me money, or give me incense, or light a candle? I can assure you that the image will do just fine without that, although making some offering to the temple, which help support the activities there, of course, and also help to open our hearts with a feeling of generosity. But that is not what the statue is saying. I am amazed that people overlook this most direct teaching. Children learn by watching and copying others. So the wordless teaching of the Buddha image is, if you want to be liberated and free, like me, then do what I am doing right now, sit. Said with a smile, of course. The great founder of Soto Zen, Caodong Chan in Chinese, Dogen Zenji, gave a wonderful exposition of this practice, universally recommended instructions for Zazen, in Zen meditation, sitting Zen. In it he says, need I mention the Buddha who was possessed of inborn knowledge? The influence of his 6 years of upright sitting is noticeable still. Or Buddha's transmission of the mind seal. I mentioned Bodhidharma earlier, who was trained in India but went to China to spread sitting meditation. The fame of his 9 years of wall sitting is celebrated to this day. He's actually kind of a folk hero in China. You ask almost any Chinese, do you know of Damo, which is the kind of Chinese way of saying Bodhidharma? They'll say, oh yeah, I know him. Since that was the case with the saints of old, how can we today dispense with negotiation of the way? So mindful sitting is not being a couch potato. Of course, this sitting does not mean being a couch potato. It's not an excuse to zone out. However, sitting frees us from the usual tasks that living beings have and allows us the freedom to direct our mind, or as Dogen says, to turn the light backward. Instead of always looking outside, look within. It's like, as an aside here from the text, people are perfectly happy to sit for an hour or an hour and a half in a movie theater watching a movie. But for some reason, they can't stand to just sit still and watch their own movie, which their own mind created. It's like the movie that your mind is, and that when you're meditating, it is reruns of your previous movie productions in your own life. So why can't you just sit down and watch those movies? And but you can watch movies in a movie theater. It's kind of strange, but that's how we are. Anyway, Jesus said not to worry so much about the splinter in the other person's eye, but to see the log in our own eye. This is the same idea. It is sitting which is the scalpel that refines our consciousness. When we first start to practice sitting meditation, our minds and bodies may be very restless and even uncomfortable, kind of like a fish out of water, flopping around, or as it is said in some of the earlier Buddhist texts, like a calf tied to a post, jumping around trying to escape. However, if we use our consciousness and effort to gently and persistently return to just sitting with our meditation topic, be it mindfulness of the breathing or body or thoughts or mantra or other specific mental object, or even no object, just sitting at attention in the present moment, at some point we realize that Dogen is correct when he says that Zen sitting is not meditation. It is simply the Dharma gate of repose and bliss. Sitting down, settling down, we find that we and everything is somehow okay just as it is. From there, we can go out into the world and act appropriately. Look again at all the famous sages noted above, from many spiritual traditions. What do they have in common? They sit. And now this is my post discussion of what I wrote. I wrote this years ago, and a friend of mine in Russia asked me to recite this so that they can, instead of a written form, they can listen to it and understand it. But what I wanted to say in conclusion here is that the process of meditation accomplishes, I would say, three things. It helps three things. The first, and these are three things that are sorely lacking in modern human consciousness everywhere in the world that I see. The first is critical thinking. So when you're meditating, a lot of thoughts may come through your mind. And when you observe those thoughts, hopefully, not guaranteed, but hopefully, you can observe patterns within your thought process. You'll notice contradictions in the narrative that you tell yourself. And if you're able to do that, hopefully, you'll be able to use that skill to other areas of your life. So when you listen to someone, any notable person, and they say one thing and then they do another thing, well, our own mind, when we meditate, we'll notice, why did I do that? It's like, or people they'll drink and they get a hangover, and you'd think one hangover would be enough for them to say, I don't need to do that anymore. But people do it. I don't understand why, but we're human beings are filled with contradictions, and the thing is that when we're reading or listening to media or other things, we'll find those kinds of contradictions and then say, well, wait a second, is that really true? Or I think I need to check the facts on that situation. If you have an argument with somebody or you have a bad experience, when you're meditating, that event will come up in the meditation, and hopefully in the quiet of the meditation, you can look at it from a more dispassionate point of view and understand better what was going on. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that when you're meditating, it helps with introspection. And one of the big problems, a huge problem, especially in the West, is that they have no or very, very little ability to look inside themselves. So it's always, I have this expression, in Western civilization, when they're talking, especially with other people or in international relations, it's always somebody else's fault. People are unable to say, what is my contribution to this problem? If you're in a bad relationship with someone, or people had a divorce or something like that, it's the other person's fault. But people aren't willing to actually look at their contribution to it, whatever it was. And even if the person was taken advantage of, we have to admit, well, we were taken in, we were fooled, but we have to take responsibility for our own faults. And the last point is empathy. So that when you practice meditation, your mind starts to blur the inherent fallacy of you versus the universe. It's like you think you are you, and everything else is outside of you, and you bifurcate things into good and bad, right and wrong, true and false, and you're unable to see nuance. And it's very important to see nuance, and that means being able to put yourself in the shoes of another person and say, oh, so that's how they think. And one of the big issues that I face in my discussions about U.S. foreign relations with other countries is that it's always the other country's fault. And the United States government and everybody in it doesn't seem to have the ability to have empathy. They can pretend to be empathetic, but it's only because they're trying to fool the other person. They don't have genuine empathy, and they don't have genuine introspection. They don't see how they've contributed to the problem. So the purpose of meditation is practical not just on the individual level, but it also is helpful on the interpersonal and even on the international level. So I would venture to guess that if you had 10% of the world population meditating on a regular basis, chances are the whole situation in the world would calm down. I've actually seen studies where there was some kind of meditation event where a large number of people in a city had agreed that they were going to meditate at a specific time, and during that period of time, the crime rate fell. Well, it's not that the people who were meditating were natural criminals and they were too busy meditating to commit crimes, but the overall vibe of the society kind of calmed down, so that people were less likely, even if they weren't meditating, to have those bad thoughts. And the reason why I think why I like Chiang Mai is because a large number of people do meditate here, and it's a great place to live. So if you want to steal some vibes, I suppose, good vibes, you could come to Chiang Mai. But it's better to actually just meditate yourself and improve yourself. So that's what I want to say here in this video, and I hope you'll enjoy what I have to say, and give it a try. So thanks for listening, and I'll talk with you again in the next video.